Hello, I'm Billy, and this is the Unlock Your Child's Full Potential podcast, where we discuss how to give our children a head start in life and teach them some basic principles of success that will serve them well in adult life. This podcast is about the lessons that are often not taught in school, and it's up to us as parents to shine the light and coach our kiddos. Things like building their confidence, developing integrity, and a strong work ethic, shaping a worldview. It will also be about cultivating emotional intelligence skills, money mindset, personal growth habits, to name a few. I'm a mom of 3 young girls, and my mission is to raise them to be good humans, happy and fulfilled adults. Join me on my quest to learn more ways to parent with intent and raise thriving kids. I'm here to create a space where you feel supported and inspired to bring these lessons into your home and try them out. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, I hope you're ready for a big dose of inspiration, hope, and gratitude. Because today's episode is dedicated to anybody who's got a special needs kid who they've been frustrated and frightened for and concerned about and told that there's nothing they can do and that it's hopeless. Few people know the challenges faced by parents of neurodiverse children better than today's guest, Darci Hawxhurst. Her daughter Haylie nearly died of spinal meningitis at the age of 12 weeks and was left brain injured by the illness. In this conversation, Darci walks us through Haylie's transition from a brain-injured kid to a vibrant young woman attending business school. She shares about the Doman Method, a neurological rehabilitation program that allows special needs kids to outgrow rather than learn to live with their problem. Thanks to this method, Haylie no longer takes seizure medications, and she no longer has crossed eyes or learning disabilities. She no longer has any of those labels in the long list slapped on her by the very well-intentioned mainstream medical community. As a child brain developmentalist and neurological evaluator, Darci emphasizes that parents can know exactly which areas of their child's brain are not working properly and exactly what to do about it. The key to developing an effective treatment plan is to target the cause rather than the symptom. Darci is here to inspire you to help your child reach their full potential, which is much higher than you've been led to believe. Enjoy the conversation and stay until the end to learn about the virtual event Darci hosts on May 13th. Hi, Darci. Welcome to Unlock Your Child's Full Potential podcast. I'm so happy to talk to you and learn more about your inspiring story.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. It's so great to meet you and to be here.
Please share with us the incredible journey you've gone through helping your brain-injured daughter to outgrow her learning disabilities and blossom into a capable young woman.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a deep breath. That is, it's actually a long story. I'm writing a memoir about it. I'm going to share the highlights. I'll share the highlights with you today because, number one, there are so many things that I've learned on this journey. It's going to be impossible to tell them all, on one podcast or in one book. And in fact, I don't think it's important that I necessarily share so much about what I've learned as I just share the truth of what happened to us, because I know that I'm not alone in this experience, but I think the way that we addressed it was unique. And so by telling this story, I hope to inspire other people to just look a little deeper maybe, and to believe in themselves a little more, and to trust what their instincts are telling them. Because so here's our story. I was a young single woman in college when I had my daughter Haylie, and she was only 12 days old when she came down with spinal meningitis. So she had a fever of about almost 104 degrees in the middle of the night, one night. And I had no idea as I was kind of packing her into the car and like rushing off to the hospital. And like, as this began to unfold, I look back now and I can see that this literally it was an invitation to an entirely different life than I had ever thought I was going to be living. There were many places on that journey, right, where I felt like something terrible was happening here. But it's only from where
frightening moment.
Right. So many frightening moments. And when I look back now, because of course things are okay now, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But looking back now, I can see how every single thing that unfolded was truly a gift, even the things that felt terrible.
So it was all meant to be like that.
It was. So yeah, she was, swept out of my arms as we went into the hospital. She was given a spinal tap and placed in an incubator and, stripped down and was covered with leads and wires and tubes. And I was standing there, still in a pajama top. I think I hadn't slept all night, probably hadn't slept for 2 weeks. She was about 2 weeks old.
No, yes.
And, I remember thinking like, oh, I just can't wait till we kind of get over this. Like, it was just kind of like one more kind of bad thing. Maybe that's where my headspace was at that time, just not really fully understanding what this journey into motherhood was really going to be about. It was going to be about becoming something new and something for more than just myself. So I wasn't ready yet. Anyway, there were a couple of really tense, terrible nights there in the hospital where we almost lost Haylie. She began to have seizures and they had to use all kinds of different medications that have terrible side effects. And, she was sedated for most of those 2 weeks. And finally, we were all kinds of tests run on her that were quite inconclusive, but the prognosis was not good. They were telling me all of the places where there had been bleeding on her brain and where there was no brain activity. And that these were the kinds. She left that hospital then with this long list of disabilities, like the disability labels. I was sent home from the hospital it was about 2 weeks later, and sent home with this tiny baby and a long list of disability labels and a big bottle of phenobarbital, because we were told like she was never going to be able to do these many things and she would need this medication for the rest of her life.
Oh, that's a terrible verdict, but you did not accept it.
No. And then they said to take her home and raise her like a normal child. And I had no idea what that even meant or what that would be. So basically we tried for about 4 years to follow like the mainstream therapies, and basically everyone was trying to help me help her learn to live with these disabilities. And I really just couldn't get that. I kept thinking, aren't we going to do something to fix this? I mean, they told us her brain was injured. They showed us where it was. Like, can't we fix this? If you have a broken leg, they fix it. And the truth is, it is possible. And we learned a lot in this journey. And yeah, Haylie's an independent, successful college student now. But it's not as if it never happened. It's not like, oh, the broken leg can be repaired and you never know it happened. But the brain can be repaired. The brain can heal and grow. We have this word now, neuroplasticity, that we weren't using as often, the 20 some years ago when this happened to us. Yeah. So for about 4 years, we tried to just treat the symptoms, basically, is all they can do. They give medications to try and mask the seizures. The seizures are a symptom that the brain is asking for things it's not getting. She had crossed eyes and crossed legs and was, multiple learning disabilities. And then they gave her these labels, multiple affective disorders, which is a fancy way to say she was moody. And yes, she was moody. She was terribly frustrated. We came to learn later, when I learned more about the brain and how to heal it. And see, this is what happens to kids. They get labels that describe their symptoms without helping us to really know where that symptom is coming from. So
and what we do about it.
Yeah, right. If your eyes are crossed all the time and you're getting multiple inputs visually, you're going to be confused and frustrated. You're going to be uncoordinated. You're going to trip and fall down a lot. We need convergent vision to get around in the world. If you're hypersensitive to sounds, then no, you don't want to stay in a bathroom where the toilet's flushing and the echoes of people talking. Those things can be painful. We know a little bit more now than we did when, like I said, when Haylie was struggling with this. But still, the world is not a great place for a kid who is neurologically disorganized. And then, we want to teach them to behave better. If we saw and heard and felt the world through the distorted sensory pathways that kids with neurological problems have, our behavior would be bad too. It's not, it's not about behavior. It's about fixing the root cause. Yeah. When she was about 4, we hit rock bottom. I mean, she was on 5 different medications, not to count the 2, or maybe she was on 4 medications, because there were 2 that we had tried that she had like life-threatening reactions to. We had to change them. She was still having seizures on a regular basis anyway. She was falling farther and farther behind her peers and being, picked on. She was miserable and I was miserable. We both had tantrums a lot. I mean, I admitted I was not, those were not my best mothering days, right? I was stressed out. I was frustrated. I was, feeling quite hopeless and alone. So that's about when really we hit rock bottom. And that's when things began to change. It was one morning, my mother, I think, gave me a note with a phone number on it. And I think she could see, she didn't really say, but I think she could see how bad things were. And she said, I've read some articles about this place. They deal with this and they can teach you what to do. I've just spoken with this woman. I want you to call her. So, I probably huffed off at the time thinking, more unsolicited advice, right? If there's any group of people that get more unsolicited advice, I don't know who it is, that the mothers of special needs children, right? Everybody's an expert, on what we need to be doing better. So I did, but I ended up making that call and it set us on the pathway to learning about a program of rehabilitation for the brain that treats the root cause, helps the brain to heal and grow and catch up and repair and build new pathways where there were none. And we've spent then a couple of decades full-time rehabilitating my daughter. It was like a miracle in slow motion. It wasn't a miracle because it very clear cause and effect. When you know what part of the brain isn't working and you know what to do to get it to grow and heal, it's no miracle at all. It's very scientific, but it was like in slow motion. That's how our kids grow anyway. We just don't expect kids with those labels to outgrow those labels. But that's what happened.
Not everybody goes through that. I mean, there are parents who just give up and kids that don't recover. So it's a miracle that you got in touch with this place.
Yeah, I think so too. That's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about telling this story and why I have Haylie. I want to share this. I have Haylie's full consent to share these details and tell this story because we both feel like it's really important that other people know what is possible. We're not told in the mainstream. We don't hear these stories often enough, I think, for them to be normalized, to believe this is possible. We think this is like some special case. Well, it's the special case that we did what we had to do to heal the brain. Because obviously, if I hadn't done these things, then those prognoses would have been true, right?
Yes. So what did they do in this center? Was it the diet, the exercise? What's the process?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, to be honest. So yes, one of the most important tools that we have to impact the body and the brain is nutrition, right? The brain has nothing to make, heal, and repair itself except with what we put in. And it turns out that brain is more than 63% fat. We need to have healthy, high quantity of good unprocessed fats in the diet. In fact, human beings have the largest brain weight in proportion to body weight of any other mammalian species. We evolved these big cortices, the human sophisticated cortex that does things, human only functions like reading, writing, creating art, the visual convergence that we have. Those things evolved over hundreds of thousands of years of wandering outside on the planet, bare feet, eating high-fat diets. So it's no surprise that in order to maintain a good brain and brain function, or to heal one, we would have to replicate some of that. So that's what this program is about. It's about providing the environment in which the brain will naturally repair itself. It's really about getting out of the way. Stop doing all the things that we do that hurt a brain. So yes, nutrition was a very powerful piece of this whole journey. Exercise, yes, to the point that I'm not a big fan of the word exercise, because I think it's become something a little bit toxic in our culture, right? That we use.
I actually meant mental exercises, not the physical.
Interesting, because what's interesting is that movement and repairing the pathways that are responsible for all of our human movements. So this is like creeping and crawling and walking and running and brachiation and swimming. Like these cross hemispheric activities actually help rewire the brain. So there is quite a bit of physical rehabilitation and physical exercise. I tend to call it just movement because it's primary human movement that impacts the brain. And in terms of mental exercises, people ask me often, because Haylie used to be, when I show pictures of her at about 3, 4, 5 years old, she had a very severe convergent strabismus, which means that, her eyes were basically crossed in the middle, one more than the other. People will say to me now that they see her years later and she has, beautiful straight vision. Some people will say to me like, oh, when did she have that surgery? Or what eye exercises did you do? And what's interesting is that both of those techniques are a little bit sort of still in the attacking symptom category. When we look at the brain in terms of more root causes, we can understand that having two eyes that can converge on the same object at a distance and therefore create our depth perception and a lot of our hand-eye coordination, that is the function of the visual centers in the occipital lobe. And one of the best ways to impact that part of the brain is actually not so much to treat the eyes themselves, but to create a situation where better vision can develop on its own. So things like creeping, crawling, brachiation. Yeah, so there was just a whole host of techniques that were used together to look specifically at Haylie's brain and where is her brain not able to do what a healthy neurotypical brain would do, what human brains have been doing in ideal circumstances for all of these millennia. And how do we then replicate the environment in which that brain can be encouraged to grow? We don't ignore the symptoms, but we only use them as a guide to point us to which part of the brain needs some love and attention and rehabilitation. All of this has to do with oxygen to the brain, nutrients to the brain, which is all about blood flow to the brain. So we have to look at how do we optimize, healthy oxygenated blood flow. There's a lot of respiratory treatment that goes into that toolkit. We can do it with activity. We do it with some special techniques and breathing tools. It's called the Doman Method, and you can find it in a couple of different places these days. The original place is the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. They're located in Philadelphia in the United States. I invite anybody who's got a special needs kid who you've been frustrated and frightened for and concerned about and told that there's nothing you can do, that this is hopeless, that if you're stuck in a system of just trying to live with treating symptoms and helping that child learn to live with the disability instead of learn to outgrow that disability, then I invite you to look it up. There's also the group that I'm connected with these days is called Doman International. It's the same basic program, slightly different team of people. And it all stems from the work of the great Glenn Doman. He was the pioneer in child brain development. He didn't do it all by himself. He had a team of wonderful searchers. They called themselves searchers, not researchers. To research is to look back, right? And they really were charting a new path into new territory. Science is just a system of questions and answers, right, Billy?
Yeah.
And so it can only answer the questions you're asking. And up until Glenn Doman, nobody was asking, how do we help this brain injured child become well? Nobody was even asking that question. So of course they weren't finding that answer. Yeah. And many of us are still not asking that question. So that's kind of one of my favorite things to do, is to invite people to start asking some different questions.
So what else did you learn through this adversity with Haylie?
That's such a good question. And I think one of the most important things that I learned was, number one, to trust my instincts, to trust her and trust her instincts, but to trust mine as a mother. So for example, all of those years that we were trying the mainstream treatments, it felt bad. Every night I had to pour a cup, like a whiskey cup full of phenobarbital, a very potent sedative, into my child. She went to sleep smelling like alcohol in her breath every night for the first 6 years of her life. Every night I gave her that cup and that dose of medicine. I felt terrible doing that. Now I knew I had to. I was told I had to. I'm following the rules. I'm doing the right thing. I'm being a good mother, right? But my instincts, I got sick. I felt sick in the pit of my stomach every time I gave that to her. And I've come to see many years later that feeling was my instincts. And so I really want to say this to mothers out there. If it feels bad, you can trust that.
Yeah,
and if it
is bad.
Yeah. And if if it feels good, it is good. I think we're almost taught the opposite. Like we're warned like to not let things feel so good. Or if it feels that good, there must be something bad about it. And that when, we're taught discipline instead of inspiration, which comes from within. So I learned to trust my instincts because pretty much everything that felt bad, I came to learn eventually we were going to do something different that worked better. And so that was my first real clue that, wow, actually, I can trust myself. I can follow my own guidance. Now, maybe I don't know everything myself. I'm going to need some experts. I'm going to need more information. I'm going to need some knowledge. But I can trust my instincts to guide me there and to know which experts and which specialists and which information really feels resonant with me, and therefore what's going to be best for my child. So that's one thing. I also learned how to advocate, that if I am going to be able to follow those instincts, then I'm going to have to know who are my allies. For a while, it felt like there weren't any. I'll be honest. I felt very alone with this. And eventually, the team at Doman International and at the institutes that taught me how to help heal my child's brain became allies. But even with them, if my instincts made me feel that I had a curiosity about something, I had to ask. If my instincts made me feel like maybe something they're recommending isn't quite right or isn't a good fit, I had to speak up. So for me, it all starts with that feeling inside of what's resonant and what's not. And then I learned I had to put my voice to that. I had to. And this is not something that's easy for women to do in our modern world. Well, at any stage of history in our world is we're not supported in speaking up. We're not believed necessarily the first time. The world does not value our instincts. So how do we value them when we're not getting the support for that? Well, you just have to do it anyway. And I've found in my journey that when I advocate for my daughter, first of all, it starts with advocating for ourselves. You have to trust those feelings and put a voice to them. Oftentimes those feelings are giving us the information we need to care for our children. And we just have to speak up. And for me, that just became this really, Brene Brown talks about it best, this ability to have courage and to be brave enough to say the things you need to say, to ask for help when you need help, and put yourself out there. I had to start telling our story, and I had to start telling the truth of it, even if it sounded crazy to some people, even if they had never heard anything like it before, because I needed help. I needed patterning volunteers. There were many parts of this program I couldn't do by myself. I needed money. If I was going to be a single mom staying home, focusing all day, every day on the rehabilitation part of the program with Haylie, how was I going to pay the bills? How was I going to pay for the treatment? I had to start asking. I just started telling people our story, being really open and honest about it, and asking for help. And I'll tell you, Billy, that is probably one of the biggest miracles that really have come out of this situation, because the truth is, people want to know the real you, and people want to know what's happening, and people want to be connected to each other. They want to feel like they matter. So the strangest thing started happening when the team of patterning volunteers would leave the house. Of course, I'm saying, thank you. They're saying to me, thank you. They're saying to Haylie, thank you.
Yeah.
They got to be a part of something. So many of those people we're still in contact with, or now Haylie is in contact with. She became friends with or pen pals with the people that would send us checks. I started a letter writing campaign, just asking people, telling them what we're doing and how unique it is and how effective it is, and that it's not covered by insurance, and this is what it costs, and how can you help?
You're so brave.
Well, you know what will make a mother brave? Fearing for her child's life. Like, there really is, it almost isn't brave. It really is just what you have to do, which is why this was a gift to me, I think, because it brought out parts of who I learned I could be that I never would have before.
Yeah, you've probably grown a lot. Wow, hats off to you. You're a wonderful mother.
I hear that a lot. I have to tell you, before I can really accept that compliment, I would say you have to check in with Haylie. She doesn't always agree with that. I was a driven mother. I'll be honest. I was driven. Sometimes that was good. Sometimes it wasn't. I definitely had an end goal in mind, which means I sometimes treated my daughter like a project. That probably wasn't the best thing to do. We talk about those things now. It's all still room for growth. But I'll tell you, I've gotten that compliment. Like, when I would send these letters out and ask people for money, and they would send back a check with a note, like, again, thanking me. I had to send thank you notes, of course, and they would thank me for doing this work. Thank me for sharing this story. Thank me for allowing them to be a part of something that felt so meaningful, right? Yeah. A lot of those people felt proud that they were part of something. Nobody wants anything more than to help a hurt kid, right? So it really gave these people a sense of power and belonging. But I'll tell you, I would get these compliments at the bottom of the letter telling me what a wonderful mother I was, or saying things like, I don't know how you do it. Whatever gifts I have that allowed me to do this. And I do have to correct. I have to correct them and you on this one little point. It's not so much what I had, like the strengths that I had or the qualities that I had that allowed me to do this work. It's what I didn't have. I could not accept it. I just couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept a life of limitation for her. I couldn't accept that she never would be able to do what her peers could do. I couldn't accept that I would always be in this role, perhaps, of having a child with a disability depend on me. I couldn't accept that she would not shine in every way she wanted to.
Yeah, but you had the courage to fight for that. You're such an inspiration, showing people how it can be different.
I'll take that one. Thank you.
Can you talk about the role of self-care for the parents of these children? You can drive yourself to the ground taking care of a child with special needs.
It's a great question. Yeah, you can drive yourself into the ground. And I sure did. I actually did. This part of the story, by the time Haylie was about 12 or 13, she was really at the top of her game. This child who had been diagnosed with mild cerebral palsy, and she became a triathlete and a gymnast, and she was invited to perform her gymnastics routine in front of this annual event. It's called the World Organization for Human Potential. And it was a meeting of the best minds, really, in science and medicine and all kinds of related fields. So they could come and see what this treatment method was allowing brain injured children to be able to do, what their potential really was. And Haylie was going to perform. And I already had such adrenal fatigue, like my adrenals, that's the organ in your body that deals with stress. Maybe everybody's heard of the adrenals by now, but I had not heard of them yet at this moment. And I blew mine out. Wow. And my thyroid came down, right? And then I had food allergies. And so this week that she was celebrating like the peak of her journey of success, I was literally a hot mess. I was covered head to toe with a painful red, itchy rash. Like I couldn't put a bra on that week. It was so painful. I couldn't take a shower. So there I was. And we traveled 700 or 800 miles, to make this trip by car. And I was holding it all together for everyone. And I was literally falling apart. So we got back from that trip. Haylie never looked at herself the same again. Like she made it. Like that was the moment we knew she's going to be okay. And she knows it and she has the confidence now.
That's most important, that she knows it.
Right? Well, I came home and collapsed into bed though.
Maybe it was because you thought that your work is done now, so you can relax.
Maybe. I don't know. But I know I felt terrible for a good long time and my healing did take some time. The truth is most of the tools I already had. I had been using them on my daughter. I just hadn't been using them on myself. So yes, I advocate for all parents, not just if you have special needs kids, but I mean, all parents, mothers especially, we need to be setting these boundaries. And I don't love that word, but you understand my point. Like we need to prioritize our own self-care. And it's not chocolate cake and bubble baths and manicures. Those things do not help you have a healthy body. Those are, again, that's that symptom level. So self-care for me has become these very basic things, but they're the tools that allow me to thrive in my life now. And I'll tell you that path back from total burnout, like all I wanted then was to be a little bit more well. Well, the path to wellness doesn't stop there either. If you keep it up, if you keep taking great care of yourself, the path goes all the way to thriving, which is where I live now. I wake up every day feeling vibrant and alive. I feel better and younger and stronger and more energetic than I did 10 years ago.
Amazing. That's great.
And I'm not special. My dad would disagree, but this is what it means to live in a human body in a way that honors your needs. So what do you need? You need a good solid 8 hours of sleep every night in a dark room, uninterrupted.
Mm-hmm.
You need nutrition. You need to nourish that body. You need to eat whole, unprocessed, natural foods. You need plenty of good, healthy fats. You don't need any sugar. This does not make me popular. It just makes me honest, right? So I built a whole program on this. I coach people now. We've got to give up
everybody
the sugar.
knows that. You don't want to hear it.
Yeah. And we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And we have to move our bodies for ourselves. We live such sedentary lives these days, sitting in our desks or sitting in our cars, and we've got to move our bodies more. And it's amazing. Those are the three basic tools that helped. They're not the only tools, but that's the basic platform, the foundation of what we did to help Haylie's brain grow. And believe it or not, when you apply it to yourself, it's a way to be enough and to be vibrant and to feel good every day. It's so funny. I almost feel guilty for saying that. Like, is it okay to tell people that I just feel good all the time? Are they will they still like me? Right?
Well, it creates the possibility that it could be like that. People can feel good. I was thinking about the kids today. I see so many overweight kids with poor postures and less than ideal movement habits. Are there any tips for parents how to raise healthy and vibrant kids?
I love this question. I have to tell you, one of the reasons I love this question so much is because this is exactly the work that I set out to do. When we were so successful with Haylie's outcomes, I thought, oh my gosh, I just want to help all the other kids. And I was a teacher and a literacy specialist and a language teacher. And so, that seemed like a really good move for me, which I was just going to teach. And I did for a little while, like want to teach instead of just teaching reading, but teach these components. Yeah. Like the whole thing. Well, because guess what? When you're all well and your brain is working correctly, like the outcome is you can read easily. Like that's one of the outcomes, right? Well, it didn't take me long to realize if I really want to help those kids, I have to help their moms first. So my COVID pivot was my full-blown business, the Vibrant Woman International business, where I teach these programs and I teach self-care and health and fitness for women. but I miss the kids, and I'm with you. I see 63% of our young people overweight with terrible posture, with terrible energy and moods and mental health issues skyrocketing. And so I'm going to launch the branch of my business this summer called Vibrant Kids. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about this going forward.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. And the truth is, it won't be that much different than what I teach for women. It won't be that much different than the tools I keep telling about in our story and Haylie's journey. It's nutrition. We've got to get off the sugar.
The thing is that while they're young, we can influence, but we have to educate them enough so when they make their own choices, they make the right choice. It's a habit right now to eat good food, but would it be this way once they are like 15, 16, 17 years old?
Boy, do I hear that. That is such a good question. And I hear you. I was afraid of this too. I mean, one of the things that I was able to do, one of the gifts of our journey is that to help heal Haylie's brain injury, I had to bring her home and stay home. And, it was so time consuming to do what we had to do that we were here together. So I was like you, when your kids are young, I had a lot of control, right? They're eating what I give them. And that's one of the first things I say to parents. Parents say, well, what can I do? They prefer this junk food or that junk food. And I say, stop giving it to them. While they're young enough that you have the option, don't do that. And let me just say this, Billy, to give you some hope and anybody else out there who's resonating with your question, a little hope. You obviously, when our kids grow up and they're out, they're in other environments, we don't have the control. We're not going to be able to do much about it then. But I propose to you that what you're doing with them at home now, and you're setting the foundation for what is food. First of all, you're defining it. When you feed them fresh, real food, you're teaching them that's what's food. When you feed them out of boxes and bags, you're teaching them that's what's food. So you're defining it now. And that's very powerful. Here's the other thing that happens. Most kids will still go out and experiment a bit, but they're going to be just like me and you and Haylie, and they're going to notice that when they eat that sugar bomb, that cupcake, or, that whatever that junk is, they're not going to feel as well. And because you've raised them with a solid nutritional foundation and feeling good in their body, now they have that as a set point. They're going to know the difference. So yeah, I still mess up sometimes too and eat a chocolate bar. And the headache that I get for 2 days after is my little, not so gentle reminder that that's not really what my body wanted.
Yeah, you're right. You're sensitive when it comes to sugar, but when you eat a little bit more, you get less sensitive. So it's easy to just get used to it again. I'm struggling with sugar. My kids eat less sugar than me. So I know it. I am trying, but still it's stronger than me for now.
Yeah, it's definitely an addiction. We know metabolically it is an addiction. And quitting sugar might be one of the hardest things to do. I'm writing a little mini course right now because I talk to people all the time who say this. It is hard to quit sugar. And one of the reasons is that we don't really understand all the other places it's hiding. So we think we're quitting sugar when we quit the obvious stuff, the cupcakes or the chocolate bar or the donuts, for example, the candy. We're not understanding that there is things like pasta and bread, chips, pretzels, crackers. All of those things may or may not have sugar on the ingredient list, but because they're highly processed, refined carbohydrate foods, they turn into sugar immediately in the bloodstream. And if we're still getting some, the cells want more. So yeah, we're kind of wired that way. And I know it's hard. So I teach something called carbohydrate tolerance. There's all of this arguing out in the world of nutrition science and all high carb or low carb, and everybody, gets pinchy about this. Everybody feels very triggered by this, and rightly so, because we really shouldn't be following anybody else's rules for what to eat. We should be following our own body's instincts, right? We've talked about this. Our bodies know what's best for us, and we just need to get in touch with that. But my carbohydrate tolerance is low. So I don't do well if I eat carb dense foods, even plant-based ones. From time to time, I can tolerate it, but I have to be careful. So I eat a lot of unprocessed meats, and there's such variety there too. And I eat a lot of vegetables and healthy fats. And that's how I feel my best. Haylie is a really good example of this too, though. And I just wanted to share this little bit because I raised her eating this way, and we had to be strict. People would say, "Oh, do you ever cheat?" And to her, that is such a ridiculous question because she thinks, cheat? Why would I cheat myself? Like, no, I've been without seizures for 6 years. Why would I take the chance at disturbing that blood sugar balance in my brain and triggering something like that? So the stakes were really high for her. And I think that's the other thing that happens. Like if a brick just hit you on the head every time you ate something bad, we would stop it real quick, but we don't connect the negative consequences so immediately. And so we think we just let it go. Mm-hmm. She doesn't ever cheat herself. And she's a beautiful example of just such a healthy relationship with food. She eats what she wants, when she wants, until she's satisfied. And, she doesn't really struggle with cravings, which I don't know about you, but cravings take up so much mental energy and mental space in our lives. And I credit myself and the way I raised her to that, but I credit her. Basically, she was given the opportunity to really just stay true to her own needs and instincts without a lot of sort of outside influences on that. And so it's made her, into quite a healthy, vibrant adult now.
She has learned so much through this process, like so many lessons.
Yeah.
So it was a blessing in disguise.
Oh. Absolutely. Total blessing in disguise. And now I have something to share. I think when I look back and I think about what I ever really wanted to do or be when I grew up, it was really to share, right? To share something of value with the world. And I had no idea that this would be what value I had to share, but that's what it is.
Any words to parents of quote unquote normal children, how to teach them to be more inclusive and not shy away from communication simply because it's different?
I love that question. Well, I think all of us, those with neurotypical or neurodiverse children, and the truth is there's no dividing line between that, right? Like I have a little midbrain sensitivity. Sometimes I'm hypersensitive to sound. So sometimes I'm going to be quite jumpy and not be able to find the right words. Like everyone is on a spectrum of brain organization. So there's really no such thing, as the quote unquote normal kids and the quote unquote special needs kids. We're all on a spectrum.
Yeah. True.
So that's first. And I just think all of us, whether your child is more or less quote unquote capable, wherever they are on that spectrum, I think it's important that we teach them about themselves first. Where are you strong? How can you use that to help someone? Where are you feeling you need help? How do we ask for help? There's a beautiful thing to observe when you see, like I have over the years, of my daughter needing help and then becoming the one who is capable enough to offer help and find her role reversing in certain situations with other kids. It's amazing to watch how kids really do love and respect each other when they're in environments that foster cooperation. Mm-hmm. And where we see bullying and where we see kids being picked on each other or being left behind are in systems that foster competition as a value, which is basically all of our mainstream systems right now in the world. It's toxic, but without the need to compete for what we believe are scarcity of resources, no human being on the planet would ever leave another human being untended. They naturally help each other. They naturally communicate to each other. And so I think as adults, we need to help create environments that have less scarcity and competition built into them. And yes, the neurodiverse kids, they cannot keep up in those environments, nor should they want to.
Yeah.
Haylie, she tends not to want to involve herself in very many of those spaces where there's a strongly competitive, and that goes for academic stuff too, where it's highly competitive. Her journey through college has been very interesting because it's so highly competitive and stressful.
How does she cope?
She has to advocate for herself a lot. And that does take some skill because like I told you in the beginning, I had to really begin to like open up and tell the truth of our story. That's not necessarily a good move if you are a student who has a seizure disorder, for example. He needs to have extra time on a test or to be able to do a makeup there are certain people it's not safe to share that information with, that highly specific information, because they're automatically going to make assumptions and project onto her. And she doesn't want that happening. She spent years fighting to take the disability labels off. And so she doesn't necessarily want to use words that, trigger people to treat her in a certain way, to treat her as less than in any way. So it's a skill. She's still working through it. I mean, I sit on the sidelines a lot these days, which is really hard for me. I'm so used to being in control and over mothering. It's a real weakness of mine. And it's been a real challenge for me to really sit down and let her take that for herself and still be supportive. But she is very good at deciding who she can trust. So how much she actually shares will depend on, again, following her instincts. And there are services set up these days. I mean, almost every university is going to have a Department of Student Disability Services where, at least she's got like a code word or a case, like a case manager, someone who can advocate for her so that she doesn't have to share those details. She gets to say something like, I've had a disability related illness. Can I please have 2 days to finish my whatever? They kind of have to add, they have to let her, which is another great thing.
That's a big step forward.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the point is those services are there to make sure that it is equitable.
Thank you for sharing your story and bringing awareness to such an important topic. Please tell our listeners where they find you and learn more from you.
Absolutely. I would love for people to come over. If you're interested in the story of Haylie's journey from, I like to call it brain injured to business school, I write about that on my blog. I'm sharing little bits of the memoir in progress there so people can come and find it. I also have my Vibrant Woman International business where I provide coaching. I help women find their way back from burnout, or better yet, let's prevent it altogether. All of that is housed on my website. So that's at darcihawxshurst.com.
Thank you, Darci. It was a very pleasant conversation.
Well, Billy, I appreciate you and the opportunity. I hope this lands as a story of hope, and I hope that it invites other people to just think about what more might be possible, both for you, but for your brilliant kids. They're all geniuses, and they have different ways of showing it.
As usual, I have pulled out a few takeaways from this empowering conversation to take with you and reflect on. 1. To any parent who has a special needs kid, stop trying to live with treating symptoms and helping that child learn to live with a disability. Instead, learn how to outgrow that disability. 2. Start asking some different questions. You can only answer the questions you're asking. A good question would be, how do I help this brain and my child become well? 3. Don't ignore the symptoms, but only use them as a guide to point you to which part of the brain needs some love and attention and rehabilitation. 4. The brain can naturally repair itself. We just need to get out of the way and stop doing all the things that we do that hurt the brain. 5. One of the most important tools that we have to impact the body and the brain is nutrition. The brain has nothing to make heal and repair itself except with what we put in. And it turns out that the brain is more than 63% fat. This is why we need to have a healthy, high quantity of good unprocessed fat in the diet. 6. Another great tool is physical exercise. It's primary human movement that impacts the brain. Things like creeping, crawling, walking, running, brachiation, and swimming. 7. Trust your instincts. Follow your own guidance. Maybe you don't know everything yourself, and you're going to need some experts. You're going to need more information, but you can trust your instincts to guide you there. You can trust them to know which experts and which information really feels resonant with you, and therefore what's going to be best for your child. If you'd like to hear more from Darci, I invite you to her virtual event, A Journey into Vibrant Motherhood, where moms will gather to reflect, share, listen, and celebrate the joy and messiness that is motherhood. Join her on May 13 from 12 to 2 p.m. EST. To register, check the link in the description. Thank you so much for listening and letting me be a part of your day. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, please share it with a friend and help me reach more moms around the world. I would also appreciate it if you consider leaving me a review. Reviews are literally the lifeblood of a podcaster and help me so much. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified when a new episode drops. See you next week.